It absolutely does matter where you live. I just wanted to share that with you. This is something that I have learned in my life. I will give you one example to help illustrate this. I moved to Logan, a little town in North Utah, and we at first lived on one side of this condominium subdivision. On the first side that we lived, it was kind of like V-shaped. The houses were like V-shaped, and it was open towards the street, and there was a playground in the middle. And in this area, the children were not always supervised. Moms would be, just close in their houses sometimes. Me, for example, folding laundry in the living room while I can look out the window and see if my kids are behaving might be one thing that I did. And it was normal for the moms in that area. And then the person who owned the house that we lived in decided to sell, and we had to move. And fortunately or unfortunately, we found another condominium in that same subdivision, except on the opposite side. And on this opposite side, just in this small, section, this small block of homes, this other side was basically completely squared in. And there was a river to this side that was completely fenced off, and just there was a playground again in the middle here. And the weird thing about moving just to that other side was that all of the people in that area basically reflect what this side of the subdivision looked like. They were very closed off and kind of more helicopter moms, and they loved to gossip on that side of the neighborhood. So as I moved over to that side, I had a lot of difficulty. I wasn't like other moms. I was raised quite differently, and I believe strongly in freedom, in teaching my children what is right and what is wrong, and letting them govern themselves. And I believe that there's no way that I can protect my kids from everything if I'm hovering over them all the time. And so I loved them very carefully and correctly throughout the years as they developed, giving them a little bit more freedom and a little bit more freedom. There was a lot of talk about me on this other side of the neighborhood because I did things differently. They were angry that I folded my laundry inside while my kids played on the playground. They were very, very, very judgmental of just very specific things. Like, for example, one time I was making dinner and my little daughter had climbed up in the window and was kind of like up in the sill, kind of like banging on the window. And then they came and knocked on the door and said, "Did you know your daughter is doing this, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I'll go get her." And I get her and I shut the window and I'm like, "You can't do that. That's not safe." And that I thought should be the end of it, but talk. I couldn't do anything right. To make matters worse, there was one day my son, who probably at the time was like 6, he loaded all of the kitchen knives into his little trike thing. And I had no idea that he had done this. I'm getting the other kids ready to go play on the playground. And all of a sudden, these knives get passed around the playground. And I'm like, where are these knives coming from? And of course, it's my son. And so I run over there and I collect all the knives and I apologize to all the moms. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know that he had those in there." And boy, did it get worse. It got so bad. There was, actually, right after I had to go get something that was important out of my husband's car, and my son was playing at his friend's house, and I was just going to be gone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. So I took my other children, left him at his friend's house, hurried and got that thing out of the car, and came back home. In that time, my son, my oldest son, came and was like, do you guys know where my mom is? And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she just left her kid. He was fine. He was like, okay, and just, goes back to his friend's house where he was at originally. But I got nasty letters on my door. Somebody came and knocked on the door and was just like, I just wanted to tell you that they are talking really bad about you and they're about to call CPS, and I just thought you should know. This was devastating. I'm like crying on the kitchen floor. I try to have this conversation with these people like a rational adult. One of the main person apparently was the bishop's wife. Had a really hard time with that. They were actually very judgmental about the lessons that I taught at church as well. So just a really, really, really hard time. And as I had these conversations with these ladies, I told them, thank you for teaching me what a normal mom does, because I was not raised with a normal mom. We basically had free reign over the whole town because my mom kept to herself and kept in her room. And I don't know. I felt like I was doing really good compared to how I was raised, but also taking the best of what my parents taught me and passing it on to my children. They did not agree. And so this was a long process. I would talk to them kindly, and then I would go back in the kitchen and cry, and then I'd come back out and say, I'm sorry, like, let's talk again, let's work this out, and go back into the kitchen and cry. The saddest part of this whole entire story is that in this little community on this side of the subdivision, there was a woman who was being beat by her husband and her kids as well, and they were terrified. Everybody was looking at me, the person who was so bad at keeping her kids under control, I guess. But what ended up happening with this family is that the mom left finally and took the kids to her home state, and the husband followed and went to her sister's family's house and actually murdered everybody. Shot them all in the head, execution style. One person survived, one of the children. It was amazing to me. First, it was amazing to me that I did not notice that this was happening with this lady. But it was amazing to me that we were all so preoccupied by what everybody thought I wasn't doing good enough at. And that someone who actually really needed our help was not getting the help that she needed. And I feel like this is a huge problem with CPS these days. CPS gets so many claims, so many phone calls, so many reports, some of the dumbest, most laughable things. And I believe a lot of us are doing the best that we can, especially foster families. And what's happening is that the real abuse, the real problem is not being taken care of. They're being swept under the rug. They're being lost in the shuffle, and people aren't really seeing what's really there. And then to bring this full circle, I just wanted to reiterate that it absolutely matters where you live, because I left that community, moved into another community that had its own problems. I started to see that people moved there to opt out of their responsibilities, and kind of saw this repeating pattern. And I wasn't the only one, because I heard other people having the same kind of experience in this town. And I want to tell you that there's an entirely different feeling of where I live now. And I live in St. George, Utah now. It is sunny here. People are happier here. There's a lot more loving people here that I've experienced. And I really do believe that the atmosphere makes a huge difference. And so if you're finding yourself in a situation that is judgmental, that is suffocating, that is dark, that is prejudiced, there absolutely are places that you can find that will feel more comfortable, that will feel more like home. And these places will usually have more sunshine, usually have more recreation, usually have, what do I want to say? Just an attraction of some sort, because I feel like that's the people that end up coming to those kind of places are usually breaking out of the cycles and patterns of their neighborhoods and the systems where they grew up, in my opinion. So I've kind of seen this as we've done more traveling, as well as we've traveled to different places. We've seen more openness, more vulnerability, more willingness to accept. Anyways, this is just my opinion. You can try it out for yourself. But if you're thinking about moving for any reason that, would improve your life, I would highly suggest looking at the demographics and even how the neighborhood is set up. Anyways, something to think about. Thanks.